What's on, people, and welcome back to another episode of Ghetto Gospel. So where we left off at, hybrid babies, heroes are old, giants on the earth, and nothing but evil everywhere, and God getting ready to clean house. Now I want to make sure I don't skip over verse 6, because it's another one of those verses that if you read it with the wrong perspective, you would think that this stuff happening was a surprise for God. It wasn't. Remember, God knew all this stuff was going to happen before he ever created us. The fact that mankind was going to be all about this foolishness and trash behavior was already on his mind before he ever said, let there be. So whenever you see stuff in the Bible like God regretted or God repented for, fill in the blank, you got to remember that God is talking to human beings about God concepts. He got to say things in a way that we could grasp. There ain't really a word for God regretted in advance, the thing he hadn't done yet, but that he had already made up his mind to do, so it was as good as done. We don't have the ability to think like God thinks, so we don't even have the need to develop a word for that. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, my wife was living in Japan. We was engaged at the time, but when she told other English speakers that we were engaged, they understood the concept in English, but they couldn't translate it into Japanese. We in the West understand that an engagement is a commitment, but there ain't no Japanese word for commitment. They just described me as her husband. I spent some time thinking about that recently, and what I realized is that one stereotype most Americans got about Japanese culture, at least when I was growing up, is that it's a culture of honor. I can't confirm how true that stereotype is, but it only makes sense to me that a culture of honor wouldn't have a word for commitment. You only need the idea of a commitment in a culture where folks' word ain't they bond. Like, I imagine if everybody was born blind, we wouldn't have a word for color, or lust, or even blindness, because them concepts don't exist in a world where being blind is the norm. So every so often you're gonna have a light bulb moment where you realize that the reason you struggling to understand something that's in the Bible is because we literally ain't got the words for it. And if you spend enough time with God, he eventually gonna show you. Show ain't really the right word. He gonna reveal some stuff that you ain't gonna have the words to explain to nobody. That's what's about to happen to Noah. Who is Noah? Well, according to the text, Noah is a dude who was righteous enough to get God's attention. Now don't get it twisted, ain't nobody perfect, including Noah. But whatever he was doing, God decided that it was good enough for him to not be on God's get back list. And that list, God was like, I'm about to murder everything breathing. Men, women, animals, bugs, birds, all y'all. And it's stuff like this that folks read and start thinking that God is just mean and vindictive. And on one hand, I can kind of understand that. But that mindset only makes sense when you don't understand what's going on. So what's really going on? Well, let's get back to Noah. What was so perfect about him that God decided to save him? When you look at what it actually says, it sounds like Noah was just righteous for his generation. And that might have been true. But when you go look at the original language, one of the words they use for generation is talking specifically about Noah's bloodline, which tells me that part of the beef that God had with the world had something to do with the bloodlines being corrupted. Don't take my word for it. If you look at verse 12, it says that all flesh was corrupted. You could also make the case from the original Hebrew that the earth itself was spoiled or ruined. That don't sound familiar at all. So we gonna stop right there, because the whole deal with Noah and his oversized boat is probably gonna take at least a couple of episodes to get through. So other than that, I'll see y'all next week. And as always, peace, and I hope y'all people straight.